There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Means that from an existentialist perspective, deciding whether life is worth living is the most fundamental question.
7. La voix d'une femme décrit les formes qu'elle voit apparaître dans la neige de l'écran télévisuel à la fin des émissions. Formes géométriques, tourbillons, spectres. La vidéo est diffusée sur un moniteur posé sur une table basse.
Hey, welcome to Book Mob episode 41. Today I'm going to be discussing a book that I just read by French writer Edouard Leve, or Edouard Leve. Not sure the correct pronunciation. I've checked on Google. There's 12 different types. Anyway, this is the book. I bought it on Kindle because I couldn't find a soft back or a hardback that I could afford, in fact, because I think one of the ones was like $800 or something. But anyway, this is, again, Suicide by Edouard Leve, and he is a French writer who, when he finished writing his book Suicide, he unfortunately took his own life 2 weeks after handing the book into his publisher in 2007. Now, the book is not about, I don't think the book is essentially about his testament to his suicide, though it could be argued that it is. But when you read the book, it's about a character who, because it's not a biography, autobiography. It's a novel about a character who reflects on the death by suicide of a friend 20 years prior. Now, it's such a touchy subject for people to confront, and I think it's a beautiful novel about loss and about the confusion, the ideas of suicide, whys, and when you read the book, you have this foreboding that that Edouard Leve had him, took his own life. So it's it's this kind of double possessiveness that you have, because the writer has taken his own life, and when you read the book, you don't understand why the character takes his own life, and in the manner in which he does it, the timing of his suicide, it kind of, and there's a real beautiful note in the where the character, I don't know if I should, well, yeah, I'll mention it. When the character who does kill himself, he opens a book to a certain page to kind of like a post-suicide message, for whoever finds him. But unfortunately, when he kills himself and his wife comes in to find him, the wind blows the book into different pages. So there's something going on there with the idea that we don't know anyone. You can't really tell. There is no, I don't know, objective or subjective way to say him, her, whoever is going to take their own life. I was drawn to the subject because in my own life I've experienced suicide close hand. My father took his own life in April 1975. And as a child, when someone just suddenly disappears, the vacuum and the hole and the coldness and the emptiness it leaves behind, I don't think can ever really be filled. It can be, packed with other things, addictions, jobs, career, relationships. But at the suddenness of the disappearance of someone by their own hand does make it's still a huge topic of cultural human significance. I mean, in every culture, every civilization, the idea of suicide has been taken on in different forms. If you think about the Japanese kamikazes, who, young men who got into planes and were told to fly them into American ships in the Pacific during the Second World War, who knew what they were doing. And then I guess you can see the levels of is that different from someone who has a job, who has a family, and then one day goes into the garage and takes their own life. And if you read the book, you'll get just a slight touch of the exhausted unexpectedness of someone that you may or may know in your life who takes their own life. It's like this, you cannot imagine it happening, and when it does, you are left with, the person has passed away. That's it. There's nothing else you can say or do. I mean, it's just as incredibly tragic as cancer or a car crash where a loved one passes away. And I don't know much about Edouard Leve. He had quite a very busy career as I think a designer or photographer of books, and he traveled. And I mean, what I'm saying is he was a person who had achieved things in life. He seemed to be, working well with life. And yet he writes this very subtle and very, and it's and I must have, first of all, it's not a romantic look at suicide at all. It's not saying, this is an idea. He's trying to tell you that reasons and desires don't always match what you see from the outside. You'll never know the inner workings of anyone's mind. I mean, there are obviously certain aspects of mental illness that can identify the possibility of suicide. However, in the book, you don't. That's the thing. You don't get that feeling that this character, he doesn't deserve to have killed himself, because he appeared to have a very, very stable, and I'm talking about the character in the book, a very stable and happy, contented life, which maybe in some existential way, that was one of the reasons he didn't go on. He was very young. The character's only like, I think 24 or something, or 25. And it might be a youthful, spur of the moment aspect. It could be something that the character had been thinking about for years. He'd have his own reasons for doing it, and unfortunately you can't ask them. And he didn't, like I said, he didn't leave first of all, he didn't leave a suicide note, and he left the page, like I said in the book, he leaves the page open, and then when his wife comes in and she opens the door, the wind blows and changes the pages. And I found that irony quite sort of like a humorous sort of look at something. And again, so Edouard Leve, he writes this book, very personal book, about a character that the character itself knows a younger person from 20 years ago who took their own life. And then Edouard Leve himself takes his own life 2 weeks later after handing his book into his publisher. And as I said in the beginning, you would think that the book is a suicide letter, suicide note. But looking at reviews and looking at people who knew Leve say, no, it's not. So, I mean, I guess that's one of the aspects of the book that will frustrate you, because you won't know. And now that you know that the writer who's writing about a subject, a character who kills himself, and then when you find out, once you know that the author has killed himself, it does. If you read the book without that knowledge, I wonder what the impact would have been. I mean, it's tragic. It's a tragic impact. It's a difficult, challenging story, and I think one of the ways he resolves that, it's not like from blah 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 blah. He did it. That's the end. No, it's sort of like a circle, and it sort of has small vignettes of life and conversations and experiences that the character goes through. So you know the characters passed away, you know, before the end, so to speak. It's not a straightforward. This is his life. This is how he lived, and this is how he died. And I wonder if when you get to that point in life where everything, you know, through challenging mental illness, turmoil, shocking changes in a person's life, that suicide may be some kind of biological reaction that like sets off a fuse that requires it to run through a certain kind of behavioral place, so that if there's no intervention or something different doesn't happen, that the fuse keeps going. And maybe if something changed in his life in that period from when the fuse is lit until the point that the character kills himself, you think, what could have changed? I mean, we don't know what could have changed in real life suicide attempts and successful attempts I'm talking about. And obviously the character in the novel Suicide is pretty intense. Now, if you look at that cover art, it says a lot, doesn't it? Look at those eyes. It's almost like he's looking at you from somewhere else. And now that we're all reading his book, we wonder if we could talk to him. You'd say, why? Was it worth it? Is it better to do that than live the rest of your life? It's hard to know. It's such a difficult topic, and there's a couple of novels that tackle the idea of suicide. There's the one that I recall most is The Virgin Suicides, and that was made into a film in about 20 years ago. I can't remember, and that was a disturbing film, and the book is a bit less disturbing than the film, though it is still quite unsettling. I think, as my father who took his own life in 1975, and you wonder if just one thing in his day, one thought, had to go to the toilet, take a dump or something, anything that would have interrupted that flow. There must be I don't know, I'm just saying, is there a flow of information, a flow of suicidal prediction that your brain just takes you towards? There was a fellow who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, a young man, and I saw this in the film, in the documentary. I think it's called Bridge. It's quite intense, very unsatisfying because it's of the topic. It just reminds you about how complicated the journey is for someone to finally, stand. I've walked across that bridge a couple of times in my life, and it's a wicked looking. It's easy to access or at least it was when I went there. It was easily accessible to stand on the railing and leap off. For instance, in Sydney Harbour, you've got fences and that are quite high. 8-foot fences, whatever. Anyway, this young boy, I think he was a teenager. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. He was badly injured, but he did survive. And he said, years later, when he was talking about his experience, he said that the second he left the edge, he said that was like it's almost like atomic time. He knew that he had made the wrong decision, and he thought there was nothing was worth doing it, but it was too late. And fortunately, he survived, and he now does talks and about he travels around talking to people about suicide, and in the sense, my father also jumped off. He jumped off a building, and you go, you know, because you sort of go off. And to tell you the truth, that was in 1975, right? In 1992, I went to New Zealand purely to bungee jump because I wanted to feel because when you first bungee jump, you're free falling before the cord sort of pulls you, you know, before the cord fights gravity and pulls you back safely. And there is this rush of mental sort of fireworks as you leap. You really, your brain says, don't do this, and then you do it. And as you jump off and you free fall, and you get this rush of the earth. For me, it was a river, but still, it just rushes up at you, and there's time enough to think. There's time enough to recognize where your body is, where your mind is. Of course, that has something to do with the fact that before you jump off the bridge, you've been preparing yourself mentally that this is going to happen. So maybe that does, and also the adrenaline as you jump off. You in the back of your head, I mean, you're taking a risk with bungee jumping, but you know, it's a calculated risk because you've seen 400 people do it before you. So you're not, you know, you don't have an absolute goal that you're going to live, but you're pretty much otherwise I guess you wouldn't do it. So when I did it, I jumped off and I felt that. I just wanted to feel that that feeling of just being in space. Not skydiving, but close to the earth, to feel the space once your feet leave the safety of the barrier. And then about I don't know, about 10 years later, I went to New Zealand, and they've got this crazy tower jump. You know, it's like Centrepoint Tower or the Seattle Needle. This huge tower, and you can jump off the tower. And as you go down, again, it's the experience of free fall in a suburban concrete jungle. So you get this feeling of falling, and then when the mechanism kicks in, it's like two strong bungee cords that come together, and as your weight pulls it down, it pulls them together. So they've obviously worked out. That's thanks for physics and all that. As you fall down, you're falling at a speed, and then it suddenly just slows you down. So you lose that free fall, but you have it for the first, I don't know, 2 seconds or something. And again, you get this feeling of the world rushing up at your face, and you can think. You can know what you're doing. You can, like I said, when this young man jumped off that bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, he said, shit, I shouldn't have done this. And in a sense, I kind of put myself in a position where I wanted to see how, you know, because I was thinking about my father as he jumped off the building. And I guess in my heart, I'm thinking, you know, I think he did. I think he probably did go, what the fuck am I doing? But you know, so as we talk about this, I'm talking about this book because Edouard Leve's book, Suicide, is totally worth reading. It's got it's a very, very challenging, difficult subject. It's a tragic story. It's frustrating, confusing, but it's heartfelt. It's, you know, again, because Edouard killed himself, 2 weeks later after handing his book to the publishers. You know, you can't deny the fact that writing the book and then then taking his own life, weeks later, there is some kind of link and connection in the text. And he hides it well because the person he's talking about is a young man of 25. I think Edouard was like in his early 40s, 42, I think he was. So he crafts this brilliant, beautiful, tragic novel, and it's totally worth a read if you want to get an insight into the one of the experiences of suicide that is not romanticized. It's not, he wasn't doing it to, when we think of suicide in aspects of saving humanity, like a soldier, a fireman going into a building knowing that he could die, those are suicides that are sort of, I guess, explained away easily by, people who witnessed it. Whereas the lonely suicide, the hanging and the shooting and the jumping off bridges and buildings that happen every single day in every city around the world, you just never hear those stories. You don't know why. There's no ifs. They're just happening. And I know for a fact that on the day my father took his own life and the hours following that event, there was just turmoil, emotional turmoil in my family that this is another topic, another subject, but it was never reconciled. It was never taken care of. It was just there. And I think that Edouard Leve's book is trying to, let people have an insight into something that is nasty and awkward and dangerous. And I guess in some respects, it's no one, that people talk about it, but I still don't think people really talk about it and tackle it. And this novel certainly provides one avenue of insight into something that affects thousands and thousands of people around the world. It is one of the most human traits, other than war and starvation. Suicide is one of the main human experiences that are that is hard to understand and hard to come to terms with. All right, thanks for tuning in. I just let you know I just after reading that, I thought I better read something with a bit more later. So I've started the 3-volume Ken Follett Century series. So I've just finished volume 1 and packed my way through volume 2, and volume 3 is up there on the shelf ready to be read anytime soon. And that's great. That's really good books. And please leave any comments or any questions about Edouard Leve's book on the subject. And thanks for tuning in if you stayed this long. And I'll see you at my next episode on Book Mob. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Ets com un jove tenista ajagut a la gespa després d'un partit. Sembla que dormis. Tens 25 anys. Ara, tu en saps més que jo, de la mort.
Le visiteur s'allonge et compare ce qu'il voit à ce qu'il entend.